Hey, everybody. You are joining an OMA podcast, and our subject today is sacrifices and sacrifices as how they relate to goals. I am your host, Shannon. I'm here with Maria and Missy as well. Ladies, how are you doing today?
Hello, good morning.
Glad to have you guys with me. And I'm really excited about this subject because this is something that came to me, was exposed to me several months ago last year. And I talk about goals a lot with the people that I work with. So I'm always looking for new and novel ways to bring a concept of goals to the discussion. Because what I've found with goals is goals are not a one size fits all policy, right? What works for Maria on goals and goal setting is not necessarily what's going to work for Missy and vice versa. We're all different. We respond to different things, both from a motivation standpoint and a demotivation standpoint. But I like this concept of sacrifice because I had never heard it before related to goals, but it just really made sense to me. So what I'd like to do is just jump right into this, and if you have any comments or thoughts about it, just speak up about sacrifices and goals. So the concept is, if you're going to achieve anything noteworthy in life, you're going to have sacrifices associated with that.
Mhm.
And many times, those noteworthy achievements, those things that we are doing or striving for, the sacrifices that we're making, we don't really think about them as sacrifices. But if you're in a relationship, a long-term relationship with somebody, if you have children, if you're running a business, if you're going back to school to pursue education, whatever, all of these things require sacrifice on your part. And but we just don't think about it as sacrifice, because when we think sacrifice, we think of something that is, I'm giving this up and I'm really going to miss this, and this is going to be a problem. But on those other pursuits, it's just part of, well, now I'm married, so I can't always think about me. We're going to be doing things, making decisions for the family more than it's the same thing. We just don't think about it. So, first things first on this podcast, I want to talk about what sacrifice is. Sacrifice does not mean something that is inherently negative or something that is a punishment, something that is unwillingly denying yourself, right? Sacrifice could be something that you are happy to give up for something else or to achieve something. Like, you may be a smoker and you may know, I don't want to be a smoker, and you want to be healthier, so you're going to give up, you're going to sacrifice all the chemical and the stimulation and everything that comes with the socialization with the smoking to achieve better health. And if you focus on what you're sacrificing rather than what you're hoping to gain, it's going to be a lot harder for you. Okay. So a sacrifice doesn't have to be something that is like a punishment or something that is forced upon us, right? Sacrifices can be something that we go to willingly and happily because what we're hoping to achieve through that sacrifice is worth it. The other thing about sacrifice is you're going to sacrifice things that probably you don't want to sacrifice. There's going to be some things that you're like, hey, this is going to be easy to sacrifice. These things are probably going to be a little bit tougher. I think that the magic happens. I think that the real growth happens in that section where it's a little bit tougher. And as we talk about this, especially in our webinar that's coming up, we're going to talk about four very common areas that people run into when it comes to sacrifice, especially for the business. And one of those is intensely hard, right? It's not hard because you can't imagine it or it's unseen. It's hard because it gets to the root of who we are and what we're about. Okay. So here's a concept. I like visuals. I like analogies because people, if they can create a visual in their mind, it tends to stick a little bit better. So, a podcast, we might just be getting people in an audio medium. They may not be watching us and connecting. So think about this visual. I want you to think about you having a very special event in your household, a special dinner. Maybe it's a holiday, maybe you're celebrating some good achievement or a graduation or something, but you are inviting a bunch of people over. You're going to host this special get together, and you've got the menu set. My wife, she loves to cook, and anytime we have a special event, weeks out, she's thinking about the menu and she's looking at what she wants to do. Not everybody does it that way, but let's just
Yeah.
pretend for this, that's the way you're going about it. So you've got all of your items that you want to serve, your special recipes, the things people request from you that you do and they love, and you're going to go to the store and you're going to go shopping. Well, we all have had this experience where we're going into a grocery store, buying the things we need for the event that we have planned, and we're just filling the shopping cart or in the South, the buggy. We're filling the buggy with all the groceries that we need. Okay. If you have your heart set on some super special prime rib that's in the meat case, and that's an expensive cut of meat, but that's going to be the centerpiece of the dinner of the special event. If that 10-pound prime rib is $25 a pound, and you don't have $250 in that budget, then you're either not leaving the store with that prime rib, or you're going to be putting other things back on the shelf and modifying your menu, modifying your plan so you can afford the prime rib. Now, I, as the grocery store owner, the person who's got the prime rib prominently displayed, I want to sell that to somebody. That's the whole reason it's got that special place in the meat counter and displayed, and all the little arrows pointed to it. I want to sell it to somebody. If it's you, great. But what you've got to do is be willing to hand over the $250 for that particular thing before you can leave the store with it. It doesn't matter to me as a store owner how much you've been praying about it, how much you've been visualizing it and manifesting this in your life, right? I don't care if you throw a tantrum in the store, you say how unfair this is and it's really frustrating and you don't understand this big event we've got planned. None of that matters to me. What matters to me is this is the item, this is the cost associated with that item, and I would love to sell it to you, but all the emotional stuff that you've associated with this makes no difference to me. If you can't afford it, please continue with your shopping, check out at the front. Somebody will be along shortly to buy this, right? It's there to be sold, it's there to be purchased. That's how I want you to think about your goal. Sacrifice is the currency to purchase your achievement, to purchase your goal. Just like money is the currency to purchase the things in the grocery store. And I think if you look at sacrifice that way and you look at goals that way, some of the inherently intimidating things about goals begin to take care of themselves. I have a lot of people who say, I don't even know where to start with goals. Goals are hard for me. How do you know when the goals are too big or too small? And they have all this intellectual what ifing about goals and goal setting process. Well, if you think about, I'm going to buy this goal and my currency is sacrifice, now you've got an ability, you've got a tangible way to kind of judge, is this too big or too small of a goal for me? Like if you wanted to do something you've never done before and you've got a year to do it, this is my goal for this year. And by the end of this year, this is what I want to achieve, a weight loss or a health thing or a business thing or whatever it may be. If you start looking at what you have to sacrifice to achieve that, and that list is exhaustive, there are so many things on there to sacrifice for you to hit the thing in the timeline. It's probably a good indicator that that goal is way too big. Now, you don't have to fix the goal, you can fix the timeline. Maybe giving yourself 2 years or 5 years would be much more realistic. On the other side of the coin, if you have something you want to achieve and you start looking at, well, what do I have to sacrifice? And you really don't have to sacrifice anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a very big goal at all. A goal should
Right.
be there to stretch you beyond what you can see for yourself. There should be, it's just a little bit out of reach, right? And if it's not out of reach, you're missing some of the really important elements of what goal achieving does for you. Otherwise, it's just a checklist and I needed to do this, I did it. It's like I needed to get the laundry done, check, we got the laundry done. There's no growth that comes in it that way. So I see you both nodding along. Are there any questions or feedback so far on the premise, the analogy, anything at all?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, so if someone is brand new to starting out to goals, they've just never had one before, even small goals, or even a younger person, do you think that that same rule still applies, that they're going to have a sacrifice, right? But their sacrifice, it may not feel as extreme as someone like myself or Maria or yourself, that like our schedule is so packed and we really do have to sacrifice. So how does someone that's just starting out, setting their first goal, learning how to make their first sacrifice, what would that be? Would that be a time sacrifice? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's great that you said about like a kid going for something. Kids understand this even before they can explain it. Like if your kid, 12, 11, 13, something like that, they want to go out for the sports team or they want to make a certain grade in a class or whatever it may be. Like, hey mom, hey dad, I really want to do well in my social studies class and I want to make an A in there. I'm doing well in every other class. That's the one that's hard for me. It's really important to me to make an A in there. Well, if you ask the kid, Well, how are you going to do that? They're going to start telling you, well, I'm going to have to study more. I'm going to have to maybe stay after a couple of days and ask the teacher to explain some things. Maybe I need to have a study group, or maybe I need to do practice tests. Or they're going to just start creating some things. And
Mhm.
if you ask them, well, you only have so many hours in a day, and have to get your chores done, and you have to bathe, and you have to eat, and right, there's certain things that you can't give up. What are you willing to give up to do this? You'll be amazed. They'll start talking about, well, I'm gonna not do my computer gaming. I'm gonna I'm not gonna watch my TV shows, right? Or every day for 30 minutes, I'm gonna do this, do this subject, work on this. Or if it's a
Mhm.
sport thing, right? I'm gonna go to the park and I'm gonna play pickup basketball and just or pickup soccer or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's not as big a thing as what like you and I deal with, Missy, as adults, but kids are intuitive about this because again, we've been sacrificing our whole life to
Mhm.
achieve something.
Right.
Riding a bike. I promise you, if you want to learn to ride a bike, you're going to sacrifice some skinned elbows, some skinned
Yeah.
knees, some embarrassing moments, right? That is the price you pay to learn how to ride a bike successfully. So
Absolutely.
they understand it. What we've done as adults is we've kind of grown out of that and think that that's an old way or that's a kid's way, but it still applies to us today. Yeah. That answer your question?
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate that. What about you, Maria?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I love thinking about the like circular pattern that happens here because, people will say, I want something, I have a goal or I have a vision. And so it's really important. We've talked about this in other podcasts and webinars, how important getting that, clarity on your vision is and your goals, really before you can set out to have any kind of action, productive or not. You were talking about the prime rib, and I thought, but some people might not even know that they want prime rib.
Right.
They don't even know that they want to have the get together at all. So we have to first identify what we want, which can sometimes be the hardest part, is just deciding what's important to us. But I love how what you're saying about sacrifice, it's almost like a litmus test of whether or not that goal is really what you want. Are you kidding yourself? Is it just pie in the sky? Sometimes we base those goals on how we want to be perceived by others, or maybe we want to be like someone else who is hitting a goal. I mean, there's so much we could say about this, but I think it's interesting to think about it. A visual person or anybody else who's maybe trying to get your brain around this, like, yes, you're going to see this happening where you think you want a goal, and then you have to decide, are you willing to pay the currency of your sacrifice to get there? And if not, be okay with that.
Yep.
Maybe it's not that important to you and something else is more important to you. And that's what makes all of us lovely, as different personalities and people in this world. We are not all trying to achieve the same goal, but I don't know, that was just a vision or the visual that was coming up in my mind. I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, some people legitimately don't know what they want. Like they are, and I don't know what that feels like. I've always had an idea of a vision of what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, that kind of stuff, even as a young man. But there are people who kind of float through life and like, I don't really have a direction and and things are good for me and I just feel blessed. And I'm like, explain that to me. I mean, how do you get that peace?
Zen.
But if they are setting goals for the first time and they are having to consider what am I giving up out of my life to do this, they will decide very quickly whether it's worth it or not, right?
Mhm.
And that may be a trial and error process many many times where they land on something that feels right or is worth giving up and sacrificing. The other side of that coin is, how do you know that prime rib is what you really want, right? Yeah, I want a prime rib because that's what my mom and dad did. That was always the special thing we did at Christmas. But I'm going into the grocery store and the cuts of meat look horrible. I'm not spending that for that trash or ratchet piece of meat right there. We're gonna change it up and do something else this year, right?
Yeah.
That's a goal too, right? You've got a goal that you've set and you thought you wanted it, but as it came into vision or you started to see what that really looked like or got a better understanding of the sacrifices required, you might make a change. There's not a wrong way to do this, right? That's people get really caught up in if I set a goal, I have to achieve that goal. I have found nothing in the rules that say if you write it down, you've got to do it because this is you and what you want out of your life. I've had tons of things that I thought were important to me or toys I wanted to buy and they were on my goal list for a long time. And I looked at them one day and said, "That's stupid. I'm not doing that." The best example I can give you of that, Priya, is a Boss Hoss motorcycle. You ever heard of a Boss Hoss?
Uh-uh.
Yeah.
Okay, you ladies know what that is. It's a V8 engine strapped to a motorcycle.
Yeah.
That was on my goal list for a long time.
Death on two
Stupid,
wheels.
stupid, stupid, stupid. Right? I had a BMW motorcycle. It was all I needed. It was more than I needed. I don't need to be riding around with a V8 engine, right, strapped to a motorcycle. And my maturity, right, out of my lust of wanting a toy, in my maturity, I looked at that on my list and said, I'm not going for that. That's dumb. So to get to your point, you may not know what you want, but this is a great way to distill that down. And if you're willing to make a sacrifice, it's probably something that's at least intriguing enough to pursue, but always give yourself that discretion that, that's not really what I wanted. That cut of meat doesn't look that good anymore, or that was a dumb thing for me to go after. You just have to be honest with yourself. You can't kid yourself about that, because if you're giving up out of demotivation or frustration or just psyching yourself out, that's not healthy. And there's a difference between giving up out of demotivation or psyching yourself out and letting go because it's not worth pursuing anymore.
Yeah. Good point.
Any other thoughts before we move on? All right. I think the other thing I want to share on the podcast, because we don't have time to go through the whole thing, that's what the webinar is for. The other thing I want to share on the podcast is this. You're going to have 4 primary areas to consider. And I don't have time on this in this platform to really go through every single nugget of these 4 areas. But the 4 most common areas I'm seeing people have to sacrifice or consider sacrifice is time, money, comfort, and identity. Time, money, comfort, and identity. Of those 4, identity is the hardest of all, right? You would think, talking to business owners, time or money is the premium. Like, tell me what it costs, tell me how long this is going to take. That's how the business owner thinks. Time and money is actually easy. Time and money is simply a decision for the most part. Identity is much harder because it can be something that you are carrying with you every single day, but you're not aware of it, or something that you have bought in as, this is who I am, and I'm only allowed to perform in this narrow band. Right? I can't do better than my parents because that would be disrespectful. Or I grew up in a certain way, so I guess success is going to pass me by. These are identity equations. And I'll tell you how this can really affect. I wear glasses. Now, I've worn glasses ever since I was in middle school. So when I see myself on a video and I'm wearing glasses, I don't see glasses. I see me. Now, somebody seeing me for the first time might say, hey, there's a 4 eyes. He wears glasses. That's interesting, right? Whatever. Now, when I do this, and sometimes I'll do this on podcasts and webinars because I get reflection and it bothers me. When I do this, I look at me and I'm like, something's wrong there. Okay. Somebody else looking at me for the first time wouldn't think anything of it. Like, isn't that interesting? Like, this looks normal to me. This looks maybe weird to somebody seeing me for the first time. This looks normal to the person seeing me for the first time. This is weird. This is my identity now, and I don't notice it. And there are things that I've just seen that really commonly with people where they have identity programming their life, and they're not really aware of it. And I'm going to expand more on that in the webinar because it is such a big thing in our lives, and you can see it in kids, you can see it in adults. Sometimes I think we think we're fooling people. We're not, right? The person who is like always so confident and just always driving. We sometimes look at those people and say, oh man, I wish I could be like that. Chances are they're doing that because their identity is completely the opposite of how they're behaving, right? So they're actually trying to overcome this burden or this fear or this thing that they've been carrying with them their whole life. Okay. So those are the 4 areas: time, money, comfort, and identity. Just a little bit on comfort here, because I think time and money is self-explanatory.
Can I dive in real quick?
Yeah, you sure can.
So one of the things that I wanted to say about the identity section is that I primarily do business coaching. So helping business owners determine areas where they have weakness inside of their business and how we can fix that. And I had one of my clients ask me once, she said, are you sure you're a business coach and not a life coach? And I said, why would you say that? She's like, because we're always going back and talking about me and where I'm hung up in my limiting beliefs, or that I'm not enough, or, all of these different things. And she's like, and I thought we were just going to talk about my numbers. And I'm like, well, it's a lot different than that though. So that identity, I'm really excited to dive into that more on the webinar because it is everything. So whenever you're looking at your struggles inside of your business, the majority of the time, it is something that is wrapped up in that identity. And I really can't even get around it. So even the people that tell me like, I don't want to talk to you about my feelings. I just want to talk to you about my business. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. You're going to have to talk to somebody else because I have not figured out how to do that. So I wanted to add that in on identity.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that too, because if the person owns the business, but they're not working in the business and not running the day-to-day operations, their identity doesn't matter. It's the identity of the person in charge. If I owned a business as an investment and somebody else is taking care of it and I just get a quarterly report, my identity doesn't matter. But you
Mhm.
can't separate the person making the decisions from the identity that they are carrying with them every day when they are making those decisions. I agree with you on 100%. Yeah. So I was going to talk about comfort just a moment. Anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Comfort, just very quickly. Comfort is not about, is the air conditioner on? Is the heat on? Right? Am I comfortable in my environment? Comfort is about more, are you comfortable in yourself? Where do you seek comfort over growth? Many of the business owners who are stagnant in my world and the people I work with have reached a level of comfort, and they've worked so hard for that comfortable place, they hold on to it with a stranglehold. They are not doing anything that risks comfort.
Mhm.
I love when somebody goes from struggling to comfort. I love when revenue is there where the family can vacation when they want to, and kids are going to the right school. And like, comfort is something we're all striving for. I don't want anybody to hear this and think, wow, I should look for not being comfortable. No, you can't do that. We
Mhm.
all seek out comfort. It's part of our nature. It's part of our makeup in whatever way that means. Comfortable in our temperature, comfortable in our neighborhood or environment, that kind of stuff. But when you prioritize comfort internally over pushing yourself for growth, pushing yourself for development, that's when that comfort becomes a block.
Mhm.
Some people have to sacrifice their comfort for the goals that they're going for. As an example, OMA, we're talking about owners transitioning to managers and hiring that position in. And that's a very uncomfortable process because the owner has all this stuff that they've built and they've achieved a level of success. And now they have to start giving away parts of themselves to let somebody else run it, and they can continue to grow in the way that they need to grow the business, right? Comfort is, I don't want to do public speaking. Okay, well, that's fine. It makes you nervous. You're not sure that you can pull it off. But what if public speaking and getting your message in front of groups of people was the one thing that would guarantee your business go to the next level or go to a level that you've never dreamed before?
Yep.
Would it be worth it to sacrifice comfort? And that's a rhetorical question in the current. It's an absolutely answerable question in the future. If you talk to anybody who was scared of things, or I'm not sure that I want to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway. You talk to those people 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, whatever it may be. Was it worth it? The answer is absolutely. I would do it again. In
Mhm.
fact, I would do it sooner and I would do it more dramatically. I would step out in a bigger way. So time and money, self-explanatory. Identity is the hard one. Comfort is the one that it's not hard. It just requires a bit of gumption, a bit of faith, a bit of belief. Willingness to be uncomfortable is hard, especially when you've been pursuing it for so long and just starting to achieve it. Yeah.
So, Doc, what do you see show up whenever someone is not allowing themselves to have any comfort? Maybe they're sacrificing too much. Maybe they're pushing themselves too hard. What kind of stressors or things might pop up for that person?
Yeah, that person's going to have burnout. They're going to be irritated at everything in life. Like, you can't go through life constantly pushing, pushing, pushing. You have to have balance. Like, you're not going to go to the grocery store every day and buy a new prime rib. Okay. It just doesn't make sense. It's not healthy. You don't have enough money for it. So you have to be objective about this and understand that there's a balance point, right? I use an example in the webinar, or will use an example in the webinar, that of a very famous football coach that told his wife, "I don't have time to be married. I've got to go win a championship."
Well,
That's not a fair trade-off. I do not recommend you sacrifice your health, your mental health, your physical health, your faith, your character, right? Your family. Those sacrifices are not worth any achievement, in my opinion, right? I want you to lay up your treasures in heaven as you grow and serve people here on earth. Okay? So it's something that you sometimes run into because There are some people who are extremely driven, but that's a fool's errand. Eventually you hit a wall, and it may not be for a decade or two, but promises. You hit that wall and you're going to feel like a shell, right? There's something about you that is now fundamentally missing, and it is very challenging to get it back. Good question. All right. Any other thoughts on this sacrifices thing?
You stole my comment on balance. I was going to say there's a difference between comfort and balance, and knowing like your values that support what that means to you.
All right. On this podcast, I just want to finish with this. Sacrificial areas are rarely one and done. You can't take a one and done approach. I'm going to sacrifice some TV time for 3 months, and then I'm going to do the thing. It doesn't work that way, because if you sacrifice TV time for 3 months and you do the thing and you accomplish, most of us are going to get to that new level of accomplishment and say, what's next? What now? What should I be doing? God, please give me a vision of where I should be thinking, what I should be thinking about. And that new thing requires what? New sacrifice. It may not be TV time now. It may be something else entirely. So don't think of goals and sacrifices to reach the goal as this is it for me. This is the thing. And once I get there, I'm golden. Because just that analogy or that visual, that special meal that you're having, you're going to have another special meal New Year's Day and Easter and July 4th. And right, it's not a one and done meal for your family. The other thing about sacrifices is you're not in competition with anybody else. You're in competition with yourself. You have to be very careful to compare your known reality with your perceived projection in somebody else. The grass is not always greener. The Joneses don't always have it better. You don't get a real version of that person that you're comparing to because you don't live in their skin 24/7. You have no idea what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know how they grew up. You would not be willing to trade places with them and live all of their experiences to get what they've got. So you're not in a comparison or in a competition with anybody else. And if you're wired that way, you have to constantly affirm this is about me and myself. I am fighting for my best future version. I'm not in a competition with anybody else. And I know that there are business leaders and really successful people that they harness that tool. Oh, our competition is doing this. We want to beat them. We want to drive them out. Our goal is to acquire their company through a merger or whatever. Okay, if you can do that in a healthy way and lead people in a healthy way, more power to you. Most of us cannot do that. Most of us turn that to a toxic level when we're dealing with ourselves. We give everybody else grace and love, and we deal very brutally with ourselves, especially when we're comparing to other people. And then lastly, just understand that as you sacrifice and as you achieve, even if you don't achieve everything you've gone for, you will be proud of yourself. There will be moments that you look back in your life and you look back on that thing that you did and what you gave up and all that went into that. And even if you fell short, that future version of you is going to say, you did good. You did good there, right? You did some really amazing things. You're not going to remember the daily hurdles, the daily setbacks, the week that it all fell apart. That's not going to be part of your long-term assessment of where you've been. It's just going to be the general. And that's a vision worth fighting for. So I hope that this will introduce sacrifices to many of our listeners and many of the folks that are engaging with us, maybe help them think about goals in a different way, maybe in a healthier way, maybe a more tangible way. I didn't write the book on sacrifices. I said this was brought to my attention, and I'm just a facilitator to share. You could go online and find a lot more resources about it than what I shared with you here. But I think it's valuable and a good tool for a lot of people, especially those that have difficulty setting and achieving goals on a regular basis. So anything else today?
No, thank you. That's a great primer for our webinar coming up.
All right,
Yes,
great.
it is.
Maria, you want to share anything about upcoming podcasts or webinars on this platform?
Yes. So in April the 5th, in the month of April, we're going to be talking about work-life balance.
Okay.
Some other topics that are coming up will be transitioning to an office manager for those that maybe are in that, point in their business life. But we also have some more personal topics. We're going to be talking about self-worth and stress in the coming months.
Very good. Ladies, thank you for your time. To listeners, thank you for your time. We are OMA. We are building businesses, by building relationships. We would love to converse with you and just love an opportunity to help you achieve what you've got going.